joined us. Thank you very much to Mario for doing the live recording and recording the meeting as well. My name is Gareth Sykes. I'm the Governance Services Officer for this Licensing Subcommittee D meeting. I'll begin by very briefly just going through the remote meeting protocol. But for the benefit of Sean, who's just joined us, please note that it was previously mentioned, and also Mr. Lord, it was previously mentioned there was going to be an adjournment at 3 o'clock. That adjournment is no longer taking place. So just to let Sean and Jason know. Okay, I'm now going to read out the remote meeting protocol, and it is as follows. Only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communications via the chair. Will everybody please ensure that their mics are muted when they're not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their microphone. When speaking, be succinct and do not exceed the allocated timeframes highlighted at the start of the hearing. If referring to a specific page or picture in the report, please refer to that specific page or report. If you're having any technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal requests to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from this meeting. This next one doesn't apply because there's only one application now for this meeting. Applicants and all of the parties will be asked to leave the proceedings once the meeting is finished. And then after the meeting, obviously the decision will be published. So that concludes the remote meeting protocol. And we'll now go to the formal agenda, which will begin with the election of a committee chair for this subcommittee. Councillors, please.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Plouvier.
I second that.
Thank you, colleagues. Okay, I think we've pretty much done introductions, but we'll do them formally. I'm Councillor Plouvier from London Fields Ward. My colleague councillors are...
I'm Councillor Brian Bell from Brunswood.
And Councillor
Anya Sizer from Hoxton East and Shoreditch.
Thank you. We also have from licensing, we have...
I'm Subashri, I'm a Principal Licensing Officer.
Thanks, Suba. And that's it from licensing. We have Amanda, who's our legal officer, Gareth, who's our committee officer running, doing the minutes. David Tuitt, you're here as well from licensing to oppose. Sorry, I'm just going to run through who people are. Kerry Ryan from the police. And then we have Sean Murkett representing the applicant. And then we have, I believe, Mehmet Bez.
Yes, correct.
Yep.
Business advisor of Tiger Pub.
The something of Tiger Pub?
The business advisor of the Tiger Pub, yeah.
Okay, so not day-to-day involved.
Yeah.
Okay, and we also have Ahmet Menkli. Great, and you are the premises license holder, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Lovely. And then we have also, I can see here, Jason Lord, who's from a local resident. And we have Councillor Kennedy, and these are the people who will be speaking also. Okay, have I missed anybody out? Wave at me if I've missed you out. No, I think not. Okay, so in that case, we'll move on. We have no apologies. I've had no apologies for absence. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chair.
And do we have any declarations of interest? Nope. Thank you, colleagues. We have no minutes from the previous meeting. I'll run quickly through the licensing hearing procedure, and I'll just notify people now that item 7, the dolphin, has been withdrawn at the request of the applicant. So we'll only be hearing item 6, the application to vary premises license for the tiger. Okay, so we've done, in terms of the hearing procedure, we've done item 1, step 1. Does everybody have the hearing procedure? It's in the agenda pack. I hope you've got it. So after step 1, the licensing officer will then outline the report. Then we hear from the applicant, and then we'll hear from responsible authorities, followed by other persons. There will then be time for a discussion through the chair, please, before we have closing remarks and decide on the application. Is everybody clear about the procedure? I think most of you have done it all before, so that's why I've gone through it rather fast. But if anybody's not clear, please say now. Okay, thanks very much. Okay, in that case, over to you, Suba, please, licensing officer, to introduce the Tiger.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing service are in receipt of an application for the variation of the premises license under Section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003 for the Tiger, Wick Road, to extend the hours for the regulated entertainment, supply of alcohol for on sales, and to remove condition 25 as stated within the report. The applicant has submitted additional information in which they have proposed some measures and reduced hours, and this email has been circulated. Representation still remains from the police, licensing, and other persons. I have nothing else to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, in that case, we'll now go over and hear from the applicant. Mr. Merkett, I presume you are going to speak to us now. But you're on mute, so I can't. Mr. Merkett, you're still on mute, I think.
Mr. Merkett, are you able to unmute your microphone? We can't hear you. Mr. Merkett, you are still muted. If you could unmute your microphone, please. I think Mr. Merkett is experiencing some IT problems. I defer to you, Chair, and the legal officer on how we will proceed.
Could you check with Mario if he's able to assist at all?
Mario? I'm not sure, Mario, if you're able to help Mr. Merkett with
Do you
the...
think Mr. Merkett needs to come out, exit the meeting and rejoin? Maybe that might...
Okay. I'm going to assume that you can hear me. I have sent Mr. Merkett the meeting ID details. I have sent them to him. So he may be able to join the meeting via his telephone, perhaps. I've sent those to you, Mr. Merkett. That was at 2:05 today.
He's also put a thumbs up, I believe, to Mario having given his phone number through the chat.
Oh, okay, right. So
do we need to give them a few minutes then?
I think we probably do, yes.
Sorry, Mario, I've emailed you his number as well. If you want, you can contact him.
Chair, sorry to trouble you, just to remind you that I think one of the councillors, the other persons, needs to leave by 3 o'clock. So I don't know if we need to ensure that they're going to be okay for that.
Yeah. Are we able to take people out of order, legal officer?
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem unless the applicant has any issue with it. I think the main point is as long as they've made their representation and everyone's had an opportunity to ask them any questions about their representation, I don't think there should be an issue about the order. I'm just conscious it's approaching. Well, we'll be at 2:30 fairly shortly. So.
Okay. Well, Mr. Merkett, you've now joined the meeting. You're back in the meeting. Are you able to unmute your microphone, please? Your microphone is.
Hello. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you.
I am sorry about that. I printed a document out and then could not get back into the meeting, so it's yeah, a bit difficult. Okay, so it's for me to present now. Are we ready to?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. This variation is for slightly extra hours for the Tiger Pub, and the Tiger Pub has been operating successfully for many years, without problems from residents, without problems from the police, and without problems from the noise team. And they've really struggled over the pandemic, and as part of this they decided to try and get some extra hours at the weekends primarily. But during the week, it's only till 11 o'clock, 11:30, I believe, on the existing license. And they've had lots of requests from customers for extra hours. They run a function room upstairs for birthdays and events that has proved to be successful. And there's a slightly restrictive condition that this can only be used when booked in advance, and they would like to use this unrestricted, basically, to remove condition 25. But primarily it's to try and get a couple of extra hours on at the weekend, and then during the week if they can. We had communication with the noise officer, who said there hasn't been a problem, no breakout, no disturbance with residents, no people leaving. Dispersal policy is fairly straightforward. There's a local minicab that they use. He said most people, Ahmed can talk and bring this up in more detail, but essentially it's a local crowd, and they're in a, I wouldn't say a unique position, but they're in a position where there's 4 major roads join this junction, and one of the major roads is the major road out of East London to join the Blackwall Tunnel. So the traffic noise is near on constant 24 hours. It's not a quiet residential location. There are residents located opposite, on the other side of the main road, but that's at a fair distance. The other side is commercial, and there's a little side street, Ben Street, and Bushworthy or road, which is a little side road that goes off in a loop. So it's not a through road, so anyone going home would not particularly go down there unless they lived there. So the main road out, the main route out for dispersal would be to the bus stop, minicabs, and then walking. And as Ahmed said, he knows most of the locals, and it's been a well-run pub. That's it, really. The condition 25 is, I'm not sure if it's a historical one. It's a bit of an odd one, that not sure why the reason that was put in. I mean, I've looked at the acoustics, and most of the windows that face the immediate residents are actually blocked off from the function room. So I couldn't really see a reason to specifically condition that. But again, it obviously goes back way before Ahmed's time and my time as well with that. Perhaps the licensing officer may have some more historical information he could share with that as to why that was specifically conditioned. But there's 2 separate staircases. The access is good. There's an outside terrace that has been conditioned for smoking, and that stops at 9 o'clock. To the north is a church, which is non-residential, and then either side is surrounded by main roads. So it shouldn't be too much trouble to actually ask for the extra 2 hours on that as well, or the extra hour. Since I should bring everyone up to date. I'm not sure if everyone's read the latest email, but I've had some conversations with Dave Atkins from the police, who outlined his concerns, which we then investigated about late night bus running, and the buses do run through the night, night buses, although not particularly regularly. I then talked to the applicant, who said most of the people would leave on foot. And we then had a letter from Kerry Ryan outlining her concerns, and we're talking to the applicant, making improvements to the security, and also scaling back the hours given the concerns of the councillors and the residents and the police. So that's it as it stands.
Do you want to just clarify what those scaling backs are?
Scaling back, well, originally it was till 1 o'clock during the week. That is now, I'm just having a look, 1 o'clock, that's now till 12:30.
So when you say that's till, do you mean opening times?
Yes, that's opening times. There's always half an hour drinking up time, so I work backwards. So the later time would be the opening time, which would be 12:30.
Okay, Monday to Thursday, yeah.
Monday to Thursday. Friday and Saturday is till 3 o'clock. And the original application was till 4 o'clock, which I think was probably a bit over optimistic. So that's now till 3 o'clock. So that's what, literally, it's 1 extra hour across the board.
Okay, so that's all licensable activities the
Yeah.
first half an hour before. And
Yeah.
Sunday is the same, is it? I can't.
Sunday's the same as a weekday, yes.
So that's an extra on that. So you're asking for 12:30 on the Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Do I have any questions, clarifications from the panel? Other clarifications? Councillor Sizer.
Just a quick one on capacity. I'm sorry if I've missed it. Roughly, what is the capacity at the moment, and what do you envisage it? What would you like it to be if condition 25 was removed? I think you're muted again.
Sorry. With these older traditional pubs, the capacity is not always listed. It may be in this case, it may not. I've got the documents in front of me. I can have a look. But I should imagine it's somewhere between 100 and 150.
Perhaps your client could answer the question. They should have that knowledge.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer, Mr. Menkley?
Yes, I can answer that. Are you asking for the function room or whole place?
For both, with and without.
Both. Okay. Maximum capacity can be 150. 50 people up the function room, 100 people the ground floor.
Okay. That answers that question, doesn't it? Yeah. Thanks. Any more questions or clarifications before Amanda North?
Yes. Did they get a fire safety assessment which confirmed this capacity?
No, that we can arrange that. We work with a good fire safety officer that I found recently that's been doing some reports for me, that is very good, who's ex-Westminster. He's extremely good. He could do that at short notice. We'd be happy to take that as a condition if you ask. I mean, my assessment runs the same as Ahmet's in the 150 upstairs. It's not a particularly big room, but it's not tiny. So, and 2 separate staircases. So I shouldn't see that would be a problem, but we'd be happy to accept that as a condition.
Okay. Councillor Bell.
Mr. Market, I think you're wrong on the opening hours on a Sunday. You currently have, premises currently has till 11 p.m. on a Sunday. So an hour's extension would only be to midnight.
Okay, I stand corrected. So Yeah, till 12 o'clock. I think for simplicity at this stage, as you said, 1 extra hour. So that would be till 12 o'clock on a Sunday to get that absolutely correct. Yes.
Cool. Thanks.
And you haven't mentioned something that was on the email about having 2 security staff on Fridays and Saturdays.
That was to address the police concerns over a bit more of a rigid format for the security arrangement, SIA. At the moment, Amit runs one and the other one's on a risk assessment, mainly because the function room is not always in use, so that the one SIA meets the 1 per 100, which would be the downstairs capacity. I think if these hours were to be
Just
granted,
to clarify, you're offering 2 permanently on a Friday and Saturday after 8 p.m.
yes, that's the case.
Okay. Okay. Committee, Councillor Spell and Sizer, do we want to hear from Councillor Kennedy now, because I believe he has to leave? Would that, and is the
Yes.
applicant okay with that? That's one of the objectors. That's is that okay if we hear Councillor Kennedy first? Thank
Yes,
you.
yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's probably sensible, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I do have to leave at 3 o'clock to go to another meeting. As set out in our representation, councillors object to this on the grounds of public nuisance. This is, as Sean said, relatively small, traditional corner pub. It's very close to the Gascoigne 2 estate. You've got parts of the Gascoigne 2 estate on the other side of Wick Road, and just further to the west of where the pub is now. And then you've got residential streets between the pub and Homerton Station, so Balance Road, Hassett Road, Oriel Road. And you've got residents above the shops on Kenworthy Road as it comes down to the pub, and then in those side roads, Bushbury and Ben, and you've got residents further along Wick Road on the other side of the junction, and on Brookfield Road where it comes down. And it is our contention as councillors that this is the classic sort of premises for which in our licensing policy we wrote LP3 core hours. And those hours, Monday to Thursday until 2300, Friday and Saturday till midnight, and Sunday till 22:30 are the hours that we believe are appropriate for this premises. I think at the moment it has later hours because later hours were grandfathered over, weren't they? The 2 o'clock hours. But people leaving on a Friday and Saturday night from this premises will be walking through residential streets to get to the late service, as the police pointed out in their representation. Will be walking through residential streets, lots of family dwellings in order to get to Homerton Station. You've got at Appendix C some resident representations. Residents are worried enough that you have a resident here in attendance today, Mr. Lord. One of the things that is driving this worry is that there is a premises that is operating with later hours and sometimes beyond its hours, and it's causing us a lot of problems only about 500 yards down the road. I know that should not reflect upon the way that the Tiger is going to be managed, but it does show to residents that premises with lots of people and later hours cause them disturbance, which is why they don't think this licence should go beyond core hours. And we as councillors are in agreement with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any clarifications for Councillor Kennedy or questions? No? Councillor Sizer.
Very briefly, you mentioned resident engagement. Can you share a little bit about volume of resident engagement, the numbers? I know you don't need to be specific, but it'd be useful to know how much concern you've noted.
So let's be clear, there is concern about this application, but not about this premises, and specifically about a premises further down the road, and the worry that if these hours are granted, the patrons here will behave in the same way as the patrons at Habbott's Bar down the road, where severe disturbance is caused to residents.
Okay. Okay, we've heard enough from, no more questions for Councillor Kennedy. Okay, in that case, thank you, Councillor Kennedy. We'll go back now to hear from the responsible authorities. So I'll go over to you, Kerry Ryan from the police, please. Oh, Amanda.
Sorry, Chair, do you need to check with the other parties in case Councillor Kennedy has to leave, if they have any questions, any more questions? I don't know if they will.
Oh, Councillor Kennedy, you mean? Yes, okay. Mr. Murcutt, did you want to?
Yes.
Clarification or question?
Yeah, while Councillor Kennedy's here, I completely sympathise with his comments. If the premises down the road is the one immediately under the flyover, that traditionally has been a dodgy, rotten pub for as long as I've lived in Hackney, which is over 30 years. So as far as I understand, it's case by case on each premises. It's a completely different clientele, completely different behaviour pattern. The fact that the noise team raised no objections at all, residents going home, clients leaving, I think it's a different kettle of fish completely, and that is basically up to the police and licensing and all the responsible authorities to sort that premises out, which I would encourage them to do. It's very difficult to taint one application where it's a traditional local pub asking, which is small, 150 capacity, asking for a slight increase, with a known premises that has been going on for years and years, that has always attracted a bad crowd. So, but that saying, I take your other points about passing to Homerton Station. I asked the applicant about this, and he said no, most of them are local, so they wouldn't be walking all that distance to Homerton Station. They do tend to live late. He knows them all, most of them, and they are local. So I think they would behave locally as well, and behave well. So just to try and reassure you on that count, if that helps at all.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kennedy, did you want to say anything else? I mean, I'm having a sort of temporary discussion period so that we can release you.
Thank you. Yes, so I would say two things. Yes, it is that premises under the bridge, but you can understand residents looking at this application, seeing it go from across one floor to across 2 floors and asking to stay open till 3 o'clock on a Friday and a Saturday, are worried that effectively this would be granting a 2-story nightclub kind of operation right next to their homes, which is why they object to it. And they may be local, but local people with a lot of drink in them still make noise as they walk home through the streets past most of their fellow residents who are trying to get some sleep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we'll now move back to the responsible authorities then. And I'll go ask Kerry Ryan to speak now, please, from the police.
Good afternoon, thank you. So this licence already benefits from hours that are beyond the core hours, as in the licensing policy, and it is surrounded by residential streets on all sides, and patrons will disperse through those streets. And we're now hearing that there could be half as many, again, of the amount of these customers that will be on the streets. And we've heard the applicant say that there is a night bus that doesn't run regularly, and all the other train stations in that area only tend to run excuse me, a daytime service or into the late evening, not during the early hours. I did ask to see the dispersal policy as it's laid out in one of the conditions in their license, but I haven't seen that as yet. And there is a potential with the increase in the amount of people that could be coming out onto the street, that there will be an increase in ASB and an increase in crime and disorder. And police are obviously more concerned with the prevention of crime and disorder. With the function room only being used occasionally at the moment for pre-booked events, if it's going to be used every day, that's when we could see an increase in noise complaints, when that room is being used potentially every day. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarification? Nope. Okay. Thanks very much, Kerry Ryan. Over then now to David Tuitt from licensing, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hope everyone can hear me okay. My representation is in today's agenda at B2. I made the representation on the grounds of the prevention of public nuisance. As you've heard, the application seeks to vary the existing premises licence and removes the condition 25, which restricts the use of the first floor function room. I'm aware now that the application has been amended just to seek an additional hour of operation every day of the week, and that we've heard detail on what that is. However, you've heard from Councillor Kennedy and PC Ryan, there are residential premises in the immediate vicinity, and it's expected that it's those residential premises and the additional activity at this site that could undermine the prevention of the public nuisance licensing objective. Of course, some of the hours are already beyond those set out in LP3 core hours policy, but those additional hours at the weekends in the early hours of the morning, that could potentially have a negative impact. So I'll leave it there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So I think we've heard from everybody now, haven't we? No, we haven't. Jason Lord, sorry, apologies. I know that you're here to, as a resident, I believe. Are you wanting to speak to us?
Yes, please, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can, perfectly.
This is a really unwelcome application, but falls into two different categories, I think. The applicants are trying to make themselves out as a friendly local venue used by locals. Well, I would regard the weekday hours, so Sunday through Thursday, as being local hours, but the Friday and Saturday issue is obviously much later into the night. So I would refer to Councillor Kennedy's comments in terms of the core hours which are in policy, and also policy talks about the Hackney licensing policy talks a lot about the applicant needing to guarantee, if those hours go beyond core hours, guarantee that the licensing objectives will not be compromised. And I don't see, taking the Friday and Saturday issue, I don't see how the applicant can guarantee that the licensing objectives will not be compromised when you're turfing out a load of people onto the streets at potentially 3:30 in the morning, who have, if they want to use a bus, there's one. So if you want to go to Chingford or to Trafalgar Square, there's one bus running every half an hour. Trains are all finished. There's the cab company across the road, if they're open, but Brookfield Road there, which is where the cab company is, has complaints of noise against the Tiger. The Tiger on their website boast that they're the sister pub to the Dolphin on Mare Street, which of course I'm sure everybody here knows is currently closed. My understanding is that it's had its license removed following an incident of violence, and it's been a notorious late night venue for years with terrible history of thefts. And So this feels like the Tiger application today feels like an attempt to create a new dolphin, but away from the eyes of the police in a relative quiet backwater of Hackney, where there's no infrastructure and no natural monitoring of the premises, either by noise teams or other council officers or by the police. It's a nightmare waiting to happen. Surely finishing the supply of alcohol at 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday night and 2 o'clock on Saturday night and having everybody leave by 2:30 is plenty. What is going to happen between 2 o'clock and 3:30 in the morning that's so important to their business? I submit to you that it seems extremely unlikely that these are going to be local punters who want a nice quiet extra pint. They're after a noisy crowd, they're after a drive-to crowd charging out of London on their way out to the A12, stopping off for another couple of drinks late into the night, with all that brings in terms of nuisance and the potential for crime and disorder. Returning to the weekdays, again, policy suggests that 11 o'clock's plenty. That's the traditional time for a local pub to close. I wouldn't welcome an extra hour on those other days either. And it's noticeable that the Cheshire Arms up the road, which has re-established itself as a very, very well-loved local pub, actually is bringing its hours shorter. So they're now closing at 10 o'clock because they're mindful of local residents. So I urge the licensing subcommittee to reject this application in its entirety.
Okay, thank you. Anybody want to ask anything of Mr. Lord? No. Okay, so we're open now for discussion through the chair. If anybody has any points they want to raise, I will go over to the applicant to respond to the points that have been made against this, if he wishes to do that. I don't see any hands at the moment who want to. Okay, so I'll go over then to Mr. Merkett for your.
I'd just like to respond to Mr. Lord. The pubs bring their hours back for various reasons, mostly because staff costs are fairly high. And if you've only got 2 or 3 customers in, closing at 10 o'clock seems to make sense. A lot of nightclubs only open now Friday and Saturday just because there is just not the business. So it would be nice to think it was all for the benefit of the residents that they close at 10 o'clock. But I think you'd have to ask the landlord of the Cheshire Arms if that was the reason. But if the pub has been open since 2 o'clock for many years, and the police may help me on this one, there's no great reports of disturbance or crime or theft. The noise team have not investigated. When I spoke to the noise team, I half expected him to want a noise report, this, that, and the other. He said, no, it's never been a problem, Sean. It's a well-run pub. It's not an issue. And that was from the noise team officer. Now, if there's problems at 2 o'clock at the moment, it would be really optimistic to then apply for 3 o'clock. But if there's not problems and it's a well-run pub and it's a local crowd, 1 extra hour should not be bringing all the fears that I'm hearing from possibly the residents and some of the responsible authorities. If it had a track record of being a problem, yes. The connection with the dolphin, it's definitely not a dolphin type environment. The dolphin's been running for very late hours for a very long time, and it's had a very checkered history. A lot of the crime reported there is mobile phone thefts. There's odd issues. I am aware that there's been a much more serious incident, and that's being resolved. I don't know what state that's in at the moment, but to the best of my knowledge, nothing like that has ever happened at the Tiger pub. It is not being portrayed as another version of the dolphin. It's nowhere near big enough. It doesn't have a garden. It doesn't have the 3 floors. There's certainly not sufficient business with 150 capacity to start charging £10 entry. It is not that popular. It is not that kind of pub completely. So to bring that in is a bit of a red herring, really. I mean, we could bring in lots of pubs that have had their licenses revoked. But it's not, again, it's the pub down the road. If that's causing an issue, I would urge everyone present here to try and resolve that, which you have the power to do. The police, the responsible authority, you could revoke its license.
Stick to the, do you mind if we stick to the tiger rather than?
Okay.
I am aware that there've been in the other representations, there has been mention of when the tiger has its functions, then there is noise and disruption locally.
But to the best of my knowledge, and to the noise team officer, that has not been reported, though. He said he's not heard any reports of complaints about the tiger. That's all I can report. He's not, as far as I know, he's not present in the meeting. So if it's not an issue at the moment, the extra hours.
It's disappointing when premises say that, when we're talking about residents complaining about possible dispersal issues, and simply being told, well, there's nothing from the noise complaints. I mean, it's not something that noise would necessarily get involved with, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. That's why I raised it, because it's in the objections, and I just wondered if your client had done anything about that or had any comments. I mean, obviously at the moment, the function room booking suggests that it isn't open all the time, necessarily late. So
I appreciate that.
So this is quite a big change. This is like making the pub half as big again, and not running the function room, but running, consistently on that basis. That's a big change. And I think that,
I appreciate
it's
that.
important to notice what the residents are saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like when I was there to do one of the visits, there was a young child's party that finished at 7 or 8 o'clock, and Ahmet said, that's the function room's now finished. We're not allowed, that booking has finished. We're not allowed to let other customers go upstairs, even if we're busy. That finished at 7 o'clock. And he said, where do they live? He said, oh, they just live around the corner. They're all local people that are making use of this facility. And the offer that to address the concerns of this slight increase in capacity would be that there'd be one security upstairs and one downstairs, specifically over and above what he has to do at the moment. So he is willing to accept changes. I mean, I could ask Ahmet to talk now. I'm aware he hasn't actually said much, but he could perhaps support the local aspect and the well-run aspect of the premises.
Would you like to talk about that? Councillor Bell, do you have a specific question to ask that might help here?
I'm not sure to what extent it helps, but I was going to say that the main point for me is we have a core hours policy.
Yeah.
This venue is already very much through that, and I haven't heard a coherent argument why we should breach that policy and grant extra hours. Is there a coherent argument why we should reward this pub with extra hours?
Okay. Did you want your client to speak, or
would you like to reinforce that, Ahmet, about the local aspect and the fact that it's not the same sort of pub as the Dolphin, and that there isn't a history of problems or noise issues here, and perhaps how people go home as well? Ahmet, are you still there?
Hello, hi, yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, we are not like Dolphin, because I know what was the wrong there. I'm not gonna do anything like that, because we don't wanna be Dolphin. We don't wanna be like nightclub. We just want to host our local customer here, because everyone is asking me to have one more drink, and then I have to say sorry. We have to follow the rules, and then we don't want to lose the license. And but everyone wants to sit at the like couple of hours. But our license finishes 1 o'clock. 2 a.m. weekends, 11 o'clock weekdays. And because of the corona affect us too much. That's why this is our request to apply for license.
Okay. Okay. I think we may have come to the end of the information input now and the discussion, unless anybody wishes to raise anything else. Okay, I'm happy to move over into Amanda.
Chair, I don't know if it's worth asking whether or not they'd considered using temporary event notices at all for any of these additional hours that sometimes are sought.
I'm, to be honest, I'm not sure if he has used temporary events. There's often a lot of caution about that, in that some licensees think it's a bit cheeky for some reason. But I can ask Ahmed if he's done that. I always encourage applicants to do that, to prove to everyone that it works, that it will work without causing the problems, and it will work, and everyone's happy and everyone's reassured, and they can show that they can manage it and control it. But to be honest, I don't know. I can ask Ahmed if he's aware of that.
The written report clarifies that there be no 10s in this premises. See, it's in the written report, Mr. Market, there'll be no 10s.
Okay.
Sorry, can I speak now?
Yes,
or?
please do. Yeah, on the
Yes, I haven't done any 10 yet, because Corona is still our life. Corona is still here. That's why how can I apply for it? Because I don't want to take any risk, and we don't want to make big party here. That's why I haven't done any 10 yet.
Okay. And so how long have you been at the pub, Mr.
More than 2 years.
How much more than 2 years?
Like almost, sorry, it's 5th of March. Yeah, less than 2 years, sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We took over the place 5th of March 2020, just before Corona.
Okay, sorry, it's all a bit confusing, because I thought I'd read somewhere that this was a long-standing management of the pub, but obviously not. Okay, thank you. Anything else we need to know before people sum up? Okay, I will ask if the other people want to do any summing up. Councillor Kennedy, you're still here. Do you wish to sum up?
I think it's basically, this should be a core hours premises. It's a classic core hours premises. It's a residential neighbourhood. You need to hear specific extraordinary reasons for it not being that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lord, do you want to sum up?
I agree with Councillor Kennedy. They already have 4 extra hours on top of core hours. They have 2 lots of 2 hours, 2 hours Friday, 2 hours Saturday. That's plenty to trade, and to trade responsibly. They say they distance themselves from the Dolphin, but why then would they mention that they're sister to the Dolphin on their website? They want to run a nightclub. They say they don't want to run a nightclub. but they do. The imagery on their website is nightclub. It's glitter ball, it's dancing, it's Aperol spritz. It's you know, it's fun times. It's not a quiet pint from a local.
Okay, thank you for that. David Tuitt, do you want to sum up at all?
I've got nothing further to add, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Kerry, Ryan.
Chair, just to reinforce that we're looking at an increase in capacity with an extra hour of drinking, which in my experience changes the way people behave. When they're on the street, they're more likely to be noisy and rowdy, and they'll be walking through residential streets. I think the hours they've got, which are already beyond core hours, it should not be extended any further. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think that's finally back to you, Mr. Murkett, to sum up.
Okay, I accept all the concerns of the residents and the councillors and the local authority, but I would go back again to the fact that there's no noise reports, there's no police reports for rowdy behaviour, there's no disturbances. This is all conjecture, and whilst I would have advised some 10s to be put in, I think we need to, all of us, acknowledge the responsible attitude of Armet and the management in not putting 10s in and not extending until the COVID is almost over. If this had been 6 months further on, I would then have suggested to him straight away, put some 10s in, show you can do it, fine, 1 extra hour, 2 extra hours, whatever. And if there is no issues, there's no noisy disturbance, no rowdy behaviour, it all works fine, that's great. But we are in the situation where COVID and the pandemic is just about coming to an end. So I think he needs to be applauded for that attitude. When I first met him months ago, I'm not even sure if I suggested the extra 10s. I usually do. But again, I think we were just coming out of the last lockdown. So it was a very tricky situation. And part of the reason why Hackney and Dalston and Shoreditch are vibrant areas is there has been some increase in hours over the core hours. The core hours are, I would say, particularly restrictive, but they serve a purpose, and they serve a purpose for new applications, and they give a basis for people making decisions. But this is not a problem. This is not a pub with a line, a history of problems. It's a problem with a function room that is not being used to its full capacity. And it could be that the function room is conditioned just for Friday and Saturday nights, for example, over and above it can be used all the time if someone books it all the time. The only condition we're asking to be removed is it's the pre-booking part of it, so that it is open for people. If it gets busy downstairs, you can go upstairs without someone pre-booking an event. So it's not particularly onerous. It's not like you're suddenly adding half the room, half the capacity to the pub. It's just a matter of actually not having to pre-book it. So that could be conditioned to the weekends only, that it's unbooked, and then perhaps for kids' parties and things during the week, it can be booked as it is normally on the licence.
Councillor Bell, you have raised a hand.
Yeah, I may be repeating myself to some extent, but for me, it's the core hours issue that is the most important.
Yes.
So I wanted to give Mr. Murkett and Mr. Ahmed a final opportunity to address that. The only mitigation you've offered is at the weekends. You offered the extra door supervisor at the weekend, and you've offered now possibly conditionally upstairs use. But you're asking us to reward you with an extra hour during the week against our core hours policy. Why would we want to do that? I haven't heard one coherent argument for it, other than presumably give them extra business.
Well, there's many pubs that have core out. Well, they have hours that run till 3 o'clock during the week.
Yes, but why would we grant this one more hours?
mainly because of requests from customers so that they can drink later, so that if it works safely, there seems to be no reason to go against that. If there's a history of problems and there's a potential for a lot of problems, then I would agree that you restrict it. If at the I mean, the main extra hours that the applicant really need, where the business will actually help survive and keep this as a local pub, is probably at the weekends. If the committee's minded to grant it, I mean, a condition could then be put that could be scaled back to the weekday hours remain exactly as they are, and the only additional hours and the lifting of condition 25 is for the weekend. I think I can ask the applicant, he can actually say whether he'd be happy with that as a last, if it's a deciding point on whether or not to grant this, I can ask him if he's happy to do that. Unfortunately, in these online meetings, you can't have a quiet word for 20 seconds and then come back and speak, but I can ask Ahmet himself directly if he'd be happy with that.
I'm happy with that.
Okay, thank you. Amanda, did you wish to?
Yes, I mean, if then Mr. Merkett needed to speak to his client, we could always give them a few minutes. I don't know if Chair, if you wanted to do that, but there were just 2 points I wanted to double check whether the members were satisfied that they had sufficient information, and that is to check with licensing and the police about the condition 25, whether or not they have any issues about that. I know that they've said about the additional patrons, but just wanted to make sure members felt they had enough information about whether or not to remove condition 25. And also I wanted suggest that maybe if you could double check with Mr. Lord whether or not prior to this application was he aware of any issues at the premises or any complaints, etc. I don't know if that will help members.
Mr. Lord, would you, I know that I think it wasn't your application that specified issues when the Tiger has late bookings, but do you have any experience of problems from the Tiger at the moment when they are open late?
If you're trying to sleep and your kids are trying to sleep, disturbance at 11:30 in the evening is preferable to disturbance at 2:30, or God forbid 3:30 in the morning.
Okay, so but yours, okay. Okay, councillors, do we want to hear any more information? Was there anything? Sorry, Amanda, I'm not quite sure that what you wanted me to check apart from that.
Okay, condition 25.
Oh yes, condition.
If you have enough information as to
Yeah, are we comfortable we have enough information from the authorities regarding that condition? I think we do, but
I am.
Yeah.
I have. Yeah, I feel that we do. Yes, thank you.
I think we find ourselves in a position where we feel that perhaps possibly that hasn't been very much used at the moment, so it's difficult to. We are protecting and preventing rather than dealing with the current situation. Okay, if everybody is happy, I will draw the meeting to a close then, unless I see any hands saying no. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. And apart from those making the decision, please, you can now leave, and the decision will be relayed to you formally within 5 working days and informally tomorrow through the licensing department.
Thank you, Chair. This concludes this meeting. Thank you to the applicants and also
Thank
the
you.
representatives of responsible
Thanks.
authorities.
Thank you.